Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be doing what I hope to now make a semi-monthly series of an updated Joe Biden versus Donald Trump 2024 election prediction. And yeah, we're just going to really pop right into it. There's not too much to say at the beginning. When I say semi-monthly, I mean I'll probably post this once every 2 months, maybe once a month as 2024 gets closer and closer, because let's be real, it's going to be here literally before we know it. But yeah, I think it's about time to do an updated prediction for Trump versus Biden again, because that is, one of the more likely matchups for 2024. I personally don't think that Joe Biden's going to run again, but the betting markets, I think, do have this as the current 2024 matchup. I think it's going to be Trump versus Harris or Trump versus, another Democrat. Yeah, so we're just going to hop right into this one with the safe states for Joe Biden. So Biden would probably win Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois. Colorado's close, but, I mean, it's really close. I guess I'll have it as likely because this is, if the election were to happen today. And I don't think he'd win Colorado by that amount of, the election. I shouldn't say, if the election was held today. But I'm, if Biden's approval numbers stay the same, and if trends continue, I think this is what would happen. So I guess I'll say Colorado, say blue, because it's really trending to the left, but it's close. Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, Maine's 1st District, D.C. Actually, I'll rescind my calls on Connecticut and Rhode Island because I think they're going to narrow up in 2024. But yeah, I think that is it. For Trump, he probably wins these states by safe margins. Utah, yes, it's trending blue, but I don't really think that Trump would necessarily lose it or win it by under 15%. It would be close, though. It would be close to 15%. Also, I'm just going to... I forgot Connecticut. Mississippi, Alabama are probably safe Republican. I'll even say Iowa's safe Republican because I do think that Iowa's going to vote to the right of Kansas in 2024. So I think as a result of that, we're going to see Kansas being about a 10-point margin of victory for Trump. Maybe actually probably 13 or 14, maybe not 10, but I don't know. Iowa's probably going to vote about 15% for Trump. If I really had to guess, I'd say Biden probably just keeps falling in the rural areas, and so do the Democrats, and because Iowa's such a rural state, that's kind of just going to do them in. So, yeah. Now, for our likely Biden states, he probably wins New Mexico by a likely margin. It could actually narrow off, and I do think the New Mexico is going to narrow up in 2024 unless something big changes, so I think it would only be a 6 or 7% margin of victory here. It's maybe similar to 2016, if that makes sense. Probably close to 2012, though. Because New Mexico is a state that is very reliant on the oil industry, and oil workers and just generally working class voters have been really going against the Democratic Party as of late, especially Joe Biden. And when we talk about the voters that, besides that make up New Mexico, we think of Hispanics and urban voters, and yes, Biden's going to win the urban vote in New Mexico very easily, but when you talk about Hispanic voters, a lot of Hispanics in New Mexico are rural Hispanics, and I do think that there's a lot of room for Democrats to fall with rural Hispanic voters. So that is, I think, why New Mexico has some interesting trends long term, but it wouldn't flip in 2024. Very unlikely. Virginia is likely for the Democrats. So is Connecticut. Maine at large is also likely. I don't really think any of these states are too competitive. They're just going to fall to below 15%. Connecticut's probably the most Democratic of these states, probably about a 14, maybe 13% margin of victory for Biden. It wouldn't be as close to 2018 governor, but it would, kind of resemble the coalitions, but Biden would still do better. Virginia is likely, I usually used to have it as safe because, I really thought it would accelerate that trend. But because the Republicans still did win the gubernatorial election, because they still did, very well in Virginia in 2021, which I know is a very circumstantial election, I'm not denying that. But I just think I'm not comfortable putting in Virginia as safe Democrat, even though, obviously, Democrats have elected governors in red states like Kansas and Kentucky, and the Republicans done the same in, states like Vermont and Maryland. So, governor elections are always weird. I'm not going to pretend like they aren't, but I'm just saying that I don't feel fully comfortable giving Virginia to the Democrats by more than 15% in 2024, when Joe Biden's not very popular right now, and when the Republicans literally won the gubernatorial election 2 months ago. So yeah, now going over to our likely Republican states, Alaska, Kansas, these states are probably likely, to be honest with you. Also, I forgot to label the second district, Nebraska, as likely for Biden. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We've seen the new congressional boundaries. They're not really too different. Tennessee got about a point more Republican, if I recall correctly, but, does it matter when Biden won it by 7 and is trending blue anyways? No. So Alaska's going to be difficult to tell because I don't really, fully know where it's trending. Obviously, the Democrats are getting more competitive, and the areas of the state that are trending blue are growing. I get that. But, Trump has good appeal, or in 2020 at least, he had pretty solid appeal for Republican to Native American voters in the North, so I don't really know what we'd see a trend map look like, but I do think Alaska would fall to about a 10%, maybe less, because, Trump won it by 10 2020, might be 8 points in 2024. Kansas is probably going to be at a 14% margin of victory in this scenario for Donald Trump. Again, Biden did quite well in the Kansas City suburbs, and he won Topeka. He did well in Riley County. He did well in Wichita. And so, I think that the Republicans have a lot of room to fall in eastern Kansas, and I think because of that, it's going to propel the state to a leftward trend, but not competitive. When I have a state as light red, it does not mean I think it's competitive. It means I just think it's going to be under 15%. Ohio's also likely. I don't really see an argument for Ohio not being likely in this scenario. It's pretty solidly a Trump plus 10 to 12 state in this election. 2020, one of my bad takes was that Ohio was a toss-up, and I think I had it as a toss-up until mid-October. And in mid-October, I gave it to Trump by a lean margin. I moved it from, I always had Trump favored. It was always tilt Republican, but tilts are always going to be toss-ups. So, it'll go safe, likely, lean, toss-up. And then toss-up, I generally, on Twitter and, on Instagram, I'll have states as toss-ups officially. But on YouTube, because no one likes when I leave toss-ups, I'll always give you a gun-to-head prediction. And Ohio was like that for me, in September and October. Then in mid-October, I, saw some polling. I just really didn't think there was enough for Biden there, so I had it as leading Republican, but said, Biden was, still had a decent chance of winning Ohio. He ended up losing it by 8. He did not, it turns out, have a decent chance of winning Ohio. Democrats in Ohio lost the House popular vote by almost double digits. Ohio rejected the Democratic Party in 2020. So that is, there's not really any trends in Ohio that benefit Democrats, and there are none that outweigh the trends towards Republicans. So even if Donald Trump somehow manages to be more unpopular in 2024 than he was in 2020, which, again, he was not very popular in 2020, and, Biden's not really very popular right now, I don't necessarily think that Ohio wouldn't even narrow up that much. It would probably shift to the right anyways. South Carolina is similar. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, though. Biden would do very well with black voters and with urban voters. He'd maybe do a little better in the suburbs, depending on how much of an effort he put into the state. Probably not too much, to be honest with you. So I think it would be, similar to 2020, very similar to 2020. And then Trump would win the second district and made by a likely margin, because similar to, Maine second's kind of similar to Nebraska in that it's not, the boundaries did not change. I think it got a point more Democratic, but which helps Jared Golden for sure, but it does not, really matter for the Democrats at the presidential level, because unless something big changes, they're going to be losing this district by, close to 8-10% in the near future. So, I think that is all. Now, for Biden, his lean states, I think Biden would win Minnesota by a lean margin. I say this pretty confidently. It's closer to likely Democrat than it is to toss-up. Minnesota has been a very Democratic state for the past, 20 years, but, the past 10 years, even really bad elections for Democrats, Minnesota's been, pretty good for them. And, when I say very Democratic, I don't mean it's, voting for Democrats by California or Massachusetts margins. I mean that, the Republicans have come close in a few races, but they have not realistically, had a chance at winning Minnesota. And that's despite the fact that Minnesota's, has a lot of non-college educated white voters that are, which is like the main Republican demographic. And for whatever reason, Minnesota, these voters tend to be decently Democratic. Like, Democrats don't win non-college educated white voters in Minnesota, but they still do very, very well with them. And because of that, I really think that Minnesota, like unless the GOP really changes something in Minnesota, like unless they go out with a bang in 2022 or 2024, Minnesota's going to be blue. And Biden's going to still do well no matter how unpopular he is. He's still going to do well in the Minneapolis suburbs. He's still going to do well in Minneapolis. He's still going to do fairly well in the Iron Range, and he's still going to do well in cities like Rochester and Clay County too. Democratic votes in Minnesota are Biden's margin of victory. If you take away Hennepin County, which is the home of Minneapolis, pretty much, if you take away that county, the state's about even. And even then, without the state's largest county, the fact that the state is still even just shows how democratic the rural areas of Minnesota are. So, even if Trump somehow manages to improve in rural Minnesota, which he might do because Democrats still do decently well there in 2024, there's just not. There just aren't the votes just aren't there in Minnesota for Republicans in the near future. So even if Biden's unpopular, Minnesota's probably still going to stick with him. And actually, in this scenario, he is unpopular, so it's still going to stick with him. New Hampshire's similar. It's a very white state, but the Democrats still do well there because their party infrastructure is so strong, and because, especially in New Hampshire, you have a lot of college-educated white voters who have been living there, and they're voting for Democrats. They'll often vote for Republicans at the state level, like Chris Sununu. And, they might probably, but let's be honest, very likely not re-elect Chris Pappas in 2022, if we're being real here, because he just got drawn out by the New Hampshire Republican Party. Whether they're going to sign that map is not 100% sure, but probably that map's probably going to get signed. Yeah, I would say that New Hampshire's probably going to stay blue. I get that Trump did very well there in 2016, but even 2016, when Clinton forgot New Hampshire existed for a solid month and then realized, oh, we got to go there now, he still only lost he still lost by 3,000 votes. So I'm pretty confident New Hampshire for the Democrats. I think they're going to win it in 2024. I don't think there should be too concerned about 2022 either. So New Hampshire, a lean Democrat. I think that's it for Biden. Now for Trump, he has got a lot of lean states. So I think he wins Texas by a lean margin. I think that he wins Florida by a lean margin. And I think he also wins North Carolina by a lean margin. And you know what? I'll give him Wisconsin as well. And so these are four really big states that, he lost Wisconsin in 2020. But, these other three, the Sun Belt, he won. He won Texas by about 6. He won Florida by about 3. And he won North Carolina by about 2. So Texas is trending blue. The Democrats are doing very well in Dallas-Fort Worth. They're doing very well in Austin, San Antonio, and they're also going to be, winning Harris County probably by a little under 20%, which, are pretty standard margins. The reason that Texas is going to stay red is because Hispanics in the South, which I know, and I've said this before, we're not sure how Hispanics are going to trend. It's very hard, Hispanic trends should be analyzed at a very individual level because obviously not all Hispanic voters are the same, and, saying that all Hispanic voters are the same is just unproductive, if not ignorant, to be honest. So, Hispanics in Texas, I don't know exactly how they're going to trend in 2024. If I had to guess, I'd say they keep trending towards Republicans, but that could very well be wrong. But either way, I just don't think Texas flips that soon. It's probably going to flip in 2028 if I had to guess. It's probably tilt to lean Democrat in 2028, but in 2024, do not see it flipping. Florida, same thing. Well, not really the same thing, but I think the Hispanic voters, it's going to be hard to see where they trend. If I had to guess, I'd say they're going to trend Republican in 2024, but Biden did so badly with Florida Hispanics already that I'm not, sure whether Trump can do even better. He technically can, of course, but whether it's realistic, I'm not sure yet. I still have to see polling data, and I'd have to see the crosstabs of some of these polls, and, take some really in-depth looks, which I'm glad to do, by the way, on my next big thing that I'm going to announce very soon. We'll do a lot of polling analysis, but, yeah, so Florida, I do think, is going to be pretty solid for Trump in 2020 or 2024. He'll probably win it by 5%, to be honest. Florida's getting more Republican as a whole, and I just do not see, Florida really said no to Joe Biden and the Democrats in 2020, and I just don't think he'd be willing to go back and campaign for it in 2024 when he doesn't really need it. it would basically clinch a victory, but he has a much better path in other states than Florida. North Carolina is going to be another heartbreaker for Democrats. I actually think that it would trend a little bit to, we're actually not going to talk about North Carolina yet. We're talking about Wisconsin, though. And I say Wisconsin is going to vote to the right of North Carolina for the first time since, I believe, the 80s. Which, no, not even the 80s. Actually, that's a good question. I think maybe, I actually don't know. Maybe it was a Reagan election because all the states were so red. But, even then, Wisconsin had not gone reds prior to 2016. It hadn't gone red since, I think, 84. So, I actually don't know. But, yeah. So, anyways, interesting. I would like to see the last time that North Carolina voted to the left of Wisconsin. It's probably, been 80 years or something crazy like that. But, anyways, Wisconsin, I do think that it's going to vote to the right of North Carolina in 2024. It's very rural. It's very white. The Trump, I get that he did well here in 2020 and still lost, but the areas that the Democrats are doing well in are very packed. They're kind of packed into cities in Wisconsin and really everywhere else. Even the suburbs of Wisconsin are still quite red. So I just don't see a path for Biden here in 2024. He could win it. It would still be fairly competitive. He'd still probably only lose it by 3 or so, but it's just 10 electoral votes that are trending away from Democrats, and I just do not necessarily see a path for Biden here, especially if he's still unpopular, especially if Trump keeps winning white working class voters, and especially if gas prices are still they're falling, which is good, but I just don't see a path to victory for Biden in Wisconsin right now. Biden, he has his tilt states. I think win Georgia by a tilt margin. Again, Georgia is really, really tough to see here because, look, there's always a chance that the suburbs just revert a little bit back to the GOP, and that's enough for Trump. But at the same time, these even if these areas trend to the even if the Atlanta suburbs trend to the right by a little bit, as long as Biden still wins them, he'll be fine because they're growing and because they're diversifying and because, yes, if suburban whites trend 3% to the right in 2024, that's not it matters a little bit for congressional races, but it doesn't matter, assuming that trends with Asian voters and Hispanic voters and black voters in Georgia continue, because voters of color in Georgia, that the population has been growing. It's getting more Democratic. So as a result of that, I would think that Georgia is going to vote for Biden in 2024, seeing as voted for him in 2020, and he, I didn't really see that coming. It was the state that I got wrong. For those of you who are longtime viewers of the channel, Georgia was the only state I got wrong in 2020, but I think it would go blue in 2024. Now Trump, and by the way, this is a state that I think is a complete toss-up in 2024, but that I'll show you at the end. So I think Trump does sweep the rest of the states, though. I think Michigan is really, really toss-up-y, and I'll explain why in a second, but I do think Trump would win this matchup. I think Nevada and Arizona are similar. Trump would continue. It looks like he'd continue his improvements with Hispanic voters. Again, we don't know that for sure. It's never great to assume anything in that regard for sure because trends are so unpredictable. But I do think that he continue his Hispanic trends. Or the trends that he has going for him with Hispanics. He'd also probably, I don't really know, to be honest, because Trump is probably going to lose Maricopa County. I'll say it. He'll probably lose Maricopa and Washoe, which are the two swing counties of these states, but it doesn't matter if Trump narrows the margin in Clark a little bit, which, if Trump can keep Washoe at D+5 or Biden +5, which is what it's currently at, and he can narrow Clark by, 2 or 3%, he's probably got Nevada in, he probably wins Nevada. Arizona, he's just got to do a little better in Maricopa and keep the trends with rural voters and Hispanic voters, and that's enough for both those states. Obviously, Biden only won, Nevada by 2.4% and Arizona by 0.3% in 2020, despite being 10% more popular nationwide back then than he is now. And Trump, was not popular then. He's still probably not popular now, but I don't really know if it matters as much if Biden's now unpopular too. Could be 2016 repeat. North Carolina, as I explained, I think it's going to be another heartbreaker for Democrats. Probably lose it by about a point or so. So yeah, not too much to say here. I think the Republicans are going to keep doing well in the suburbs. North Carolina, obviously, they're going to see the suburbs of North Carolina are still pretty red, The Democrats are going to probably start improving in 10 years from now, if I had to guess, because North Carolina's trends always take a while for whatever reason, which means in 2024, Democrats are going to have to do really well to win, which if Biden's not popular, I just don't see that happening. Pennsylvania, I think, votes for Trump as well. He just, does so well with working class voters that I can't see him losing the state. Like, he might... Okay, so... Here's my thing, and this is why I think Trump wins Pennsylvania if he runs again, especially against Biden. Biden did not do very well in Pennsylvania. In an election where Trump had a 43% approval rating, where he was down 7 or 8 points in the polls in Pennsylvania, he only won it by a point. Trump only lost Pennsylvania to Biden by a point. And Biden, he didn't do well. He did worse in Philadelphia than Hillary Clinton. He did not do that well in Allegheny County. He did not do that well in rural Pennsylvania. He did not do that well with working class voters. He barely won Erie County, and yeah, he did not do. He was not a super Pennsylvania candidate. He was not Obama. He was not Bob Casey, and he was not Tom Wolf. The reason he won Pennsylvania was because he did so well in the rural areas, or in the suburban areas. What am I saying? Not rural, suburban. He won Chester County by 17. He won Montgomery by 19 or 18 or something crazy, and he won Bucks County by 4. Which, again, I know Bucks is a swing county, and I know that 4 points doesn't seem like a lot, but it's winning Bucks is big. And that's why he won Pennsylvania, just because Trump did so badly in the suburbs. There's always a chance that those trends continue. Similar to, I talked about Hispanic trends, I'm talking about suburban trends in this video. It's really hard to predict if trends are going to continue at the rate they're continuing. I think that Trump would keep it about even in the suburbs in 2024 with where they were in 2020 on one hand. Democrats are going to keep doing better down ballot in the suburbs, which is good for them. But Biden outran down ballot Democrats by a lot in a lot of suburbs, and I think he kind of ran the sprint in that he'll kind of stop where he's at, and then down ballot Democrats are going to catch up. So, in Congress in Pennsylvania or in any suburbs, the Democrats might start to do a little better, but Biden himself did really well against Trump. So I'm not sure if he would improve in 2024. He could. It's still, 2 years out, but I just don't think that he's got it in him to win Pennsylvania for a second time. So that's it for this video. The last state that we had to cover is Michigan. Again, I know that I said I'd give a prediction for Michigan for my YouTube viewers. I really don't know. I do think Michigan is a pure toss-up. I really do. I guess I'll just put in pure toss-up here and just label it in green and smack it right there. It's really close because the suburbs of Michigan, Michigan is just such a wacky state politically. It's just so weird because Republicans will gain in areas like Detroit, which are urban, and then they'll start to lose in areas like Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo or Ann Arbor. So they'll be getting killed in some rural areas, and then they'll improve by 7% in another rural area. Or in other urban areas, excuse me. I keep getting my words confused today. I don't know why. By urban, I meant areas like Detroit and Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo and, big cities. Rural areas in Michigan are red, of course, but they're not as red as the Ohio or Indiana, which is weird for Democrats because it doesn't really make that much sense that they'd be doing 10% better in rural Michigan than they would in Ohio in some cases. It's just weird. And then also the suburbs of Michigan, you have counties like Oakland County, which are 47% college educated, which is good for Democrats. It's I think higher than the national average, or 47% of people have a bachelor's degree at least. And, they vote for Democrats by 20 points, which is, blue suburb, right? And then you have Livingston County, which will vote for Trump by 21 points, and it's 36% college educated, and for whatever reason, it's just that big gap, and it's just really crazy. In Michigan, I could talk for hours about how weird their politics are, but I think I'll leave it at that for this video. So, I think Michigan's the pure top 2024. I really don't know who'd win it, but it doesn't really matter because Trump wins the election. So, comment down below who you think would win Michigan. Let me know what you think about this matchup in general in the comments. Do you want it to happen again? Who do you think would win? Do you think Biden would win re-election? It's pretty close in a lot of states. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.